right. We're gonna let everybody in here now. See how we do.
All right.
And here they come. All righty. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever the heck it might be by you. Good to see you, everybody. Welcome to, once again, the Wednesday night webinar. I am Dr. Patrick McGrath, Chief Clinical Officer at NOCD. As a reminder, always, tonight's webinar is informational purposes. We cannot give you actual therapy advice, but if you are looking for a therapist, we have them at NOCD. NOCD does teletherapy across the United States, Canada, the UK, and Australia. Download that NOCD app at Google Play or iOS. Check us out. It's a free download. And if you're interested in working with us, you're going to tap that therapist button right there on the app, or you can reach out to us at www.nocd.com. We would be more than happy to assist you and chat with you about what's going on. I am joined tonight by my new friend, Shamika Williams. Hello, Shamika. How are you?
Good evening, Dr. McGrath. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Shamika, why are you on my show? What has brought this wonderful experience for the two of us to share the stage together this evening?
OCD is what brought me here.
Oh,
believe it or
that
not.
darn OCD. Wow.
Believe it or not.
Mhm.
Yes. Personally, I struggled with OCD for 15 years. Never really knew what it was. By trade, I am a nurse. My subtype is contamination.
Wait, you're in the medical profession and you didn't even know what it was? Is that what you're telling me?
You know, when we did our psychiatry rotation, it wasn't a long rotation. It wasn't really something that we really studied and researched in nursing school.
Yeah.
So I was
hear you. Mm-hmm.
supposed to be a caregiver, a caretaker, to be able to take care of other people in the hospital. And I could, at that point, when OCD hit me hard, I couldn't even take care of myself.
Yeah.
I ultimately ended up leaving the hospital and working in rehab. I transitioned over to rehab. That didn't work out for me. And then I ended up at home, depressed, still didn't know exactly what was going on with me. Finally was told I have OCD. At first, everyone was like, okay, you're just fearful, you're this. Okay. Finally, someone said, okay, you have OCD. Okay, so how do I deal with it? 15 years I struggled. 15 years I was improperly treated. And for those of you out there who also struggle with contamination, OCD, we made it through the pandemic. I was right there with you. Okay. It was extremely tough. I was locked in my parents' house for a good 3 to 4 months, would not come outside. It was horrible. But for those of you, we made it through. And I have to say, even through the pandemic, I say the pandemic was the worst, best thing that ever happened to me.
Okay.
Because
tell us more about that.
The pandemic forced me to face my fears. It was the thing. I couldn't deal with germs. I couldn't deal with blood. I had so many triggers. If I would walk down the street and see a Band-Aid, I would have a panic attack. I would jump right back in my car. I would come home. I would clean my car out with bleach. I would go through the rituals of washing my clothes or throwing my clothes away. That was my coping mechanism. Either I had to wash it or throw it away. I was at a point where I had probably about 2 shirts and 2 pair of pants in my closet. And I am a lover of clothes and accessories. I had nothing. You name it, I threw it away. Okay. From clothes, money. I know it sounds crazy, but I threw away money. If somebody was,
You're not
if
the first person who's told me that, by the way, just so you know.
if
Mhm.
I was to go to a drive-through and get some food, which was a task just to go to the drive-through, if someone handed me my food and they had a Band-Aid on and they handed me my change back, I would throw it away,
Mhm.
have a panic attack, go home and go through my rituals all over again. I am here today because not as a nurse, not as a clinician, I am here because I'm a part of the OCD family. I am just like you all out there that has gone through those deep, dark moments where you feel like you're in the pit. You feel like it's never going to end. You feel like you're starting to make some type of success. And all of a sudden you're triggered and you're flat on your back again, trying to get up again. I'm here to let you all know it's possible to recover. Trust me, it's not easy, but you can do it. If you really set your mind to do it and do the work, it is possible. I am currently a client at NOCD. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I started with my therapist on Thanksgiving Day 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. And when my first evaluation with my therapist, I told her I went in not very optimistic.
Mhm.
And I mean, honestly, I was probably a little mean because I didn't I've been through so many different type of
Yeah.
therapies from this psychiatrist. I spent thousands of dollars trying to get some type of help, some type of relief.
Yeah.
And I went to my therapist like, what are you going to do that's different? Because I'm not optimistic about this. And
Mhm.
she said, okay. And on our second session, I had a list of everything that triggered me, and we literally walked through each one of those things step by step. And I can sit here today, a little over a year later, and look back where I was. I'm nowhere near in the same place that I was before.
Yeah.
I am so grateful to NOCD that my life has changed and yours can too. It seems impossible. And trust me, I understand it because I felt it was impossible.
Yeah. You're I this will be a weird question from everything you just said, but what do your parents say to you now? If I mean, that's got to be incredible for them to have watched you go to have to live with them to
Oh,
what you're saying today. So I'm curious
yeah.
on what they think of the whole thing.
My father's very easygoing, so my father doesn't really say too much. He tolerates me.
You
He
tell it. All right.
tolerates me.
Mhm.
For I guess my mom, she has seen the tremendous growth in me. It was extremely hard on my parents because I fought them tooth and nail. I fought my siblings tooth and nail. And we would go back and forth as to why my thoughts were rational and why their thoughts they were rational. And they're like, no, it's irrational. And we would fight constantly. I mean, my family was such a great support throughout everything. Not They did a lot of reassurance for me,
Sure.
but because they didn't know.
Yeah.
It's like as a parent, you see your child suffering and all you want to do is help them and they don't know how
Right.
because they don't understand. But for them to see where I am now, it's like they have their daughter back, they have their sister back, they have their aunt back. And I love being back. Trust me and believe, every day I have to be mindful of my thoughts. Every day, me and my thoughts and my triggers, we go at it. We have conversations. I remember Dr. McGrath watching you and you said it's like whack-a-mole and
Mhm.
how OCD is so predictable. And when I
Yeah.
really thought about that, it made so much sense. It goes through the exact same cycle every time.
Yeah.
And when you start to hone into that and you start to be able to recognize it more quickly, it's easier to stop those triggering thoughts.
Right. Yeah. Predictability doesn't have to be frightening. Right.
Yes.
And once you realize OCD uses the exact same playbook no matter
Every
what it
time.
is, every time. It's like, wait a minute, this is a one trick pony here. That's what this thing is. And it's just duped me into believing it's true, or it might be true, or what if it's true, or it could be true. Of course, its nickname is the doubting disorder. I've sometimes said it's the what if disorder too, right? I mean,
Yes. The
if you
what
can,
if thoughts are probably the most that was paralyzing.
yeah. And it's always worst case, no one's ever walked into my office or been on a Zoom with me and said, Dr. McGrath, what if everyone loves me and thinks I'm awesome? All right. I've treated nobody for that. Nobody is afraid of that, right? It's always bad, awful, horrible, worst case scenarios and everything too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Shamika, thank you for your story. We so appreciate hearing from it. And what I want to do is, let's go through some of the Q&As that we're seeing from the audience tonight.
Let's do it.
And hey, audience, if any of you want to
Let's
be
do it.
in that panel next to me over there, there we go. Just let us know. We'd be more than happy to have you come on and talk about, what your road to recovery from OCD has been like as well too. So Leanne says, let's get it here. She has breathing sensory motor OCD. It happens recently when you had COVID and it causes hyperventilation sometimes and it's hard to sleep. What are some tips to help the insomnia? Well, for me, I would say the biggest thing that you want to do is you want to purposely hyperventilate and teach yourself that you can handle hyperventilating. That's called an interoceptive exposure. And it's one of the things that we do for people who also have panic. Like many people who experience panic are so afraid of their symptoms. They think constantly, well, what if this were to happen? Or they're scanning their body all the time to try to see if they might be having one of those symptoms. And then they start to feel a tingle or something of that nature. I'm going to ask you about that in a second, Shamika. So hold that thought for a moment. When we come back to that. And when you start looking for something, you can start to find it. So Leanne, I'm betting when you're going to bed, you're probably saying to yourself, oh my gosh, I hope I breathe okay tonight. I really hope I breathe okay tonight. Well, guess what happens the moment you start thinking about your breathing and hoping your breathing is going to be okay tonight? You're going to have trouble breathing, right? I love to golf. Fun. The moment I start thinking about my golf swing, I should just put my clubs away and walk off the course, right? It's got to just be a natural kind of flow experience. Shamika, I was going to ask you this. Yes. Did you ever have the experience where you could, and you could even explain it to people, feel the germs just boring into your skin, trying to get into your bloodstream?
Absolutely.
I knew it.
Absolutely.
Tell us about that. Because there's so many people who think, and we'll probably get this question tonight, why does it feel so real? Right? I get that question every single week. Someone on here says, but why does it feel so real? In those moments, Shamika, where those germs feel like they are just pushing their way into your skin. Walk us through that experience and what that was like.
Wow. There's so many triggers, like I mentioned, that I have. And it would almost feel like my arm was almost paralyzed. Mm-hmm. And I would feel that tingling. And the more I would focus on it, the more it would trigger, the more I felt it. And as I went through therapy, I learned to sit with the feeling, which was extremely hard for me. And something, honestly, it took me probably a good 5 to 6 months to really understand what that meant. Because I would constantly say to my therapist, I don't think this is working. I'm like, how do you sit with the feeling? And then one day it clicked for me. I literally would just sit on my bed and just be there. Mm-hmm. I didn't do anything. I didn't think anything. And over time, the anxiety just faded. Mm-hmm. When I didn't focus on it and I was just still, the anxiety would go away. The tingling would stop. That sensation of feeling like I'm just contaminated. Yeah, it would go away.
I've done this in groups of people who say it's hard to understand what that means. So when I'm with a group of people who don't have OCD, I'll say to them, imagine you had lice and there were lice in your skin and on your hair and all these. And after a while, people start itching. Mm-hmm. They do. They just start to itch, right? Or imagine there's cockroaches crawling all over your skin, or beetles running over your foot, or mosquitoes swarming around you, or something like that, right? And people then start to just feel it. So our brains, yeah, we can really feel things for sure, right? Absolutely. So I'm glad you've overcome that, because I know how powerful that feeling can really be. So
yes.
Sam says, can OCD make you distort reality? You want to answer that, Shamika?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely.
And question your memory and intentions. Seems like if I ruminate, it can make me delusional, makes a mountain out of a molehill to make me feel like a bad person. Well, you got that right, Sam. It's rare that I will say when someone starts, can OCD make me? Yeah, the answer is yeah. It can lead to all sorts of interesting, wacky, and weird kinds of thoughts, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So 100% we would see something like that. All right. Mohammed says, good to have you back. Awesome. Thank you, Mohammed. Good to have you back here as well, too. Mohammed wants a motivational speech to fight and win from OCD and not give up. Well, Shamika, I think that's you. I'm gonna turn that one over to you. Give us the motivational speech.
Motivational speech. Okay. I think what I would say is you're one decision away from a completely different life.
Tell us more.
Every decision that you make, you have to decide. You have to want to get better more than you want to breathe. I had to come to a point where I was like, I'm tired. I've done this for 15 years and I want my life back. I want to be a better person than what I was before. And I had to muster up the smallest little bit of strength I had to say one step at a time, one step at a time, one trigger at a time. Sit with the feeling. You're stronger than you think you are. You really are. You just really have to know you want to get better and you're willing to do whatever it takes to get better. I know the place that you're in. It's a dark place and you hate it. You hate the panic attacks. You hate the constant thoughts, the constant worry, the being tired, being exhausted. When is enough? You have to ask yourself, when is enough enough? When you're ready to be better, when you're ready to live your life, you will. You're one decision away from a completely different life.
It means in many ways, I think, and I'd love to hear you speak about this, doing the very thing that your brain tells you if you do it will destroy you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So in doing ERP, Shamika, how many times were you destroyed, blown up, killed, maimed, anything of that nature?
I'm still here.
You're still here. Okay.
I'm still here. I'm still here. And that's something, the proof is in the pudding. You're still here.
Yeah. Jasmine says, I struggle with derealization and try not to focus on it. There's the problem, of course, right? But some days are really tougher than others. Anything that I can do to better manage it. I want you to purposely focus on it, Jasmine.
Mm-hmm.
Shamika, how long did you try not to focus on germs and how did it work for you?
It didn't. That was my whole 15 years, trying not to focusing on it, avoiding it. When I started to get a little bit better before doing ERP, I would have a whole bag of clothes in a trash bag pushed away. And I would literally tiptoe around the bag. I have to tiptoe around the bag in the front because I couldn't put my back to it because I felt like if I put my back to it, the back would be contaminated and then I have to get in the car. And it was just a whole domino effect. So you have to face the fear. It's the only way to deal with it. And that was one of the exposures that I went through with my therapist. We opened the trash bag and we went through all of the different clothes. We went through everything. I had to put the clothes on. I had to sit in my bed. And I fought my therapist tooth and nail. I told her, no, we don't put shoes on the bed. And she said, I think in this situation, it'll be okay. I'm like, but I don't think so. We don't put shoes on the bed. She said, it's okay. I said, okay. And we did it. The thoughts are going to fight you tooth and nail, and they're going to come back stronger. One moment you're going to be okay. Then the thoughts are going to come back. Recognize the thoughts. And one of my coping mechanisms now, I talk back to my thoughts. I talk back to them. When I get a thought, nope, this is OCD. This is irrational thought. This is what it is. And I stand strong and I stand bold in talking back against it. I don't just say it. I mean, if I'm out in public, I might say it in my head. But if I'm home or I'm somewhere safe where I can speak against it, speak out loud, speak against it. It's a bully. OCD is a bully. Yeah. And you can punch the bully in the face and win.
Absolutely. Why is self-compassion such an important component of recovery? I'm glad you're on tonight. We got some good questions for having a guest, so I'll let you take that one over.
Self-compassion. Wow, that's a great question. It's extremely important to have self-compassion because there are going to be times where you're going to relapse. You're going to be doing well, and you're going to start to build your momentum, which is great. You're starting to build up some strength. Then something's going to happen. It's inevitable. Something is going to happen that trigger's going to kick up, and it's going to kick you in your stomach. And you're going to fall to your knees. But you have to give yourself grace. You have to give yourself some grace and say, you know what? Okay, today may not have been the best day. I fell a little bit. Cry if you need to. Yell, scream, punch a bag, get it out. But tomorrow, you get right back up and you start fighting again. You don't wallow in it. Don't stay down in that dark pit. Don't stay in the pit. Get back up the next day, or get to the point where you can get back up immediately. That's where we want to get to, where we're like, okay, I recognize the trigger. Okay. Because I even catch myself at times running back and forth to wash my hands. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, stop. And I stop myself, but I don't get down on myself. I'm like, okay, next time I'll recognize it a little bit faster. We're still doing good. And we keep going. The self-sabotage is one of the worst things. Don't go down the path of self-sabotage.
Yeah. Not your friend, is it?
No.
All right. Well, once again, everyone, tonight brought to you by NOCD. NOCD, a downloadable app. Get through Google Play or iOS. And so excited to have a guest with us here tonight. I'm just playing with your microphone for a second, Shamika. I'm getting a little feedback on that. Okay, that's better. All right. So if I mute you, I'm not trying to mute you, Shamika. I'm just killing some feedback, and I'm going to bring you back in. Downloadable app, you can get through Google Play or iOS. Please check us out at nocd.com. And we are available across the United States, Canada, the UK, and Australia. It is a joy tonight to have a guest with us. Thank you for joining. I'm going to go to our next question here. We've got a couple of hellos. Hi from Chow. Hi from Lovelana is here tonight. Good to see you again. Zishan says, I have repetitions in my mind of recent events as if I'm traveling back in time. Any light on this would be appreciated. You know, all of us have various things that'll pop into our head. Zishan, I'm wondering if you're attempting not to have them, or you're telling yourself not to have them, and if that's playing some role in the entire experience. Because, of course, the more you tell yourself that you don't want to have these thoughts, the more you're probably going to be having these thoughts. So that's where I'm most curious with anybody, is instead of trying to stop having the thoughts, you want to kind of do the opposite, and you want to allow yourself to learn it is okay to have these thoughts. And in fact, if anyone's willing, Shamika, maybe you'll do this with me as well too. Sure. I would like all of us to think about traveling back in time for 10 seconds. Okay, go. Now, Shamika, I'm going to make a bet here that didn't bother you, and it didn't bother you because your OCD doesn't care about traveling back in time. But if I would have done this a year ago and it was about, let's all think about a Band-Aid being on the sidewalk as we're walking past it, you would have had a very different reaction to that experience than you did here. So what this proves, of course, is that it's less important about the subtype, the kind of OCD you have. And it's really more important taking a look at the way you're responding to it. And if you're making every attempt to not think about something, you're actively doing a compulsion, right? You're trying to push a thought out of your head. You're trying to make it go away. And what we want to do is the opposite. And we want to teach you that you can actually sit with or live with whatever thought or image or urge is in your head, and that you don't have to try to make it go away. Shamika, I'm going to bet the therapist that you saw before NOCD all tried to get you to get things out of your head, right?
Yes.
And that didn't work, did it?
No. The more I resisted, the stronger the thoughts got.
Okay. So that's what we know, right? So we're not going to do resisting because that's not going to help. All right, I'm going to go to the next question here. Naturally, Nia says, hi, does relationship OCD have a time limit? Mine started 2 weeks into my relationship and it's been horrible. I don't know if my relationship is right or not. There is no time limit for OCD. OCD would like to stick around forever. And so you can put a time limit on OCD by getting great treatment for OCD. That's where we can see a wonderful time limit occur for OCD. But you're not going to see a time limit just in terms of OCD waits for this long to start, then it only lasts this long, and then it goes away. It doesn't work like that. I'm sure, Shamika, you wished yours would have worked like that. That would have been nice for you.
Absolutely.
But you had to make it go away through therapy. And go ahead.
Had
You were
to
going
do
to
the
say.
work.
And I'm going to say one thing about that. When I say you had to make it go away, it wasn't that you were actively yelling at your OCD and saying, stop it, go away. It was you were sitting there and actually accepting whatever OCD was throwing you, being like, okay, whatever. Yeah, I can handle you. You are not frightening. You are not scary, anything like that.
No. Over time, I started to look at OCD as a game.
Mm-hmm.
I started to almost look at it like whack-a-mole. Every time it came up, you hit it right back down. And I almost started to play the game and really laugh at it. I really started to laugh at it like, okay, this is all right. We're here again. Okay. All right. I recognize you. Okay. You're here. Now let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just let the thoughts go with me. I would let them go with me.
Yeah. Nothing like letting a thought just travel in the car with you, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next question. Hutch Puppy says, question with an exclamation point. So it's that's a big question. I have experienced some trauma, abuse, and other things I would benefit from some general counseling for. I know regular counseling can perpetuate OCD symptoms. How do I go about this? I would make sure that you reach out to a really behavioral-based therapist if that's the case, because there's even a very good behavioral-based treatment for people who have been through trauma and abuse. It's called prolonged exposure and response prevention therapy, or prolonged ERP. And that is really important stuff to do, because similar to what we've been talking about with OCD, if you're trying to get a thought out of your head, it sticks there. We all know my friend, I'll bring it back again. Don't think of my pink elephant, right? Everyone, don't think of the pink elephant. There's the pink elephant. We know that if you try not to think of it, it's going to think of it. Now imagine an abuse or a trauma. If I tell you not to think of a trauma or an abuse that's occurred, that's the thing that's going to pop in your head. You're going to think of the abuse. You're going to think of the trauma. So it's not about any type of therapist trying to get you to get the thought of the abuse or trauma out of your head. It's about getting you to recognize you don't need to react to the thought of the trauma or abuse as if it's happening all over again, and that you need to experience a fight, flight, or freeze response when that's occurring. You can just allow for the fact that that is there, right? If any of you have ever been in a really bad car accident, you drive, you know how to do this, right? You know that, yes, I've experienced something very difficult, but I can also live with the fact that that's in my memory and still do the thing that in the past felt really dangerous to me or frightening or something. All of us have the ability to overcome very difficult things. And Shamika, I'm going to unmute you here. I think that is one of the things you were really talking about earlier.
Yes, correct. Oh, I can't hear him.
There we go. How's that now? Okay.
That's better.
All right. I was just trying to play around a little bit with our sound. Christina says she's a nurse too, and she had no idea what she was experiencing. What do you want to say to your fellow nurses there, Shamika?
I would definitely say seek treatment. It was debilitating for me to the point I could no longer work in the acute setting. And I personally love the field of nursing that I'm in now. But if staying in the acute setting is where you want to go, definitely seek treatment, because it's only going to exacerbate if you don't.
Yeah, that makes sense. Shamika, I'm going to ask you to do a favor. I'm going to have you pull out and then come back in.
Okay.
Just because there's a lot of feedback coming through on you. So end it and then just rejoin, and I'll bring you back in a minute. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, everybody, for the feedback issues. Sometimes it happens. Tech, not always 100%, right, everybody? But reminder, NOCD, downloadable app, get through Google Play, iOS. Check us out. All right. Delia says, how do you manage existential OCD, specifically around feeling chemical elements? Oh, there she is.
Okay.
Welcome back.
I'm here.
No feedback.
Much better.
Okay. There we go. Much better. Our next question was, how do we manage existential OCD, specifically around fearing chemical elements, not having purpose because the universe has no innate purpose, and fearing obsessions come up again in the future? I'll start with you, Shamika, and the chemical elements, because I'm going to bet you had some chemical fears that were going on during your contamination issues. So what was it like, especially as a nurse and working at a hospital, and there were chemicals and bloods and just all sorts of things? What was that like in the past? And now how do you approach chemicals today?
So my big trigger was blood, not so much chemicals, but my big trigger was blood. So similar. When I was working in the acute setting, I did everything I could to avoid it. Everything I could to avoid it. I always leaned on my other colleagues to assist me anytime it came to starting an IV or having even to hang blood. I couldn't even give out medicine without having in a paper cup, without having to wear gloves. I would, anytime I had to give any type of injection, I remember running into the supply room, and I would check my fingers. I would literally squeeze my fingers and check them to see if I was bleeding. It was real. After everything I did, I had to wash my hands. My hands were so raw to the point they hurt. My hands, I literally had to put Vaseline on my hands every time to just get some type of moisture on them because they were so dry and cracky. Which it was so. Where I fast forward, where I am now, how I approach things, I can't necessarily just go around and ask people to bleed. So it's a little dealing with the blood contaminant component of it. It's a little bit different. But when I do see a Band-Aid as a trigger, or I do see someone that's bleeding, I don't even have the panic that I used to, which is extremely great, because I automatically went to panic mode, and I ran. The fight or flight was there, and I'm out of there. But now I'm able to recognize it and collect my thoughts, and I'm able to stay in the situation. If it's a family member or a nephew or somebody like that, and I have to deal with the situation, bandage it up, whatever it may be, are the thoughts there? Absolutely. 100%. I deal with it, and on my way home, or if I'm after my guests leave, or whatever the situation may be, the thoughts are right there with me, and I take them right along with me, and I speak back to them. This is OCD. This is not thoughts that I'm supposed to be having. I sit in the moment if I have to. I remove myself from the situation if I have to be able to just sit in that moment and sit with that fear, sit with that anxiety for the moment. And I come back, but I don't run anymore. I don't run. And sometimes when I wake up the next morning, is the thought still there? Absolutely.
Sure.
The thought is still there, but I have to continue to do that hard work because, again, I want to live my life.
Fantastic.
You have to want it.
So the other things that were on there were about a fear of not having a purpose, or fearing that obsessions will come back in the future, and that the universe maybe has no innate purpose or anything as well too. So existential OCD, interesting, right? In the sense that people are debating things internally in their head and trying to figure out things that philosophers have debated for thousands and thousands of years, and go back to the earliest writings that we have, and you can see Plato and Aristotle and all sorts of various philosophies about, what is the meaning of things and what purpose things are, and so here's one of the things: the vast majority of people live without knowing exactly what purpose they serve or why they're here, or they've created one and they believe it to be true, right? Then you have people with OCD who doubt whatever any of those philosophies or anything might have been for anybody before. So in the end, let me ask you this, Delisis. Does it really matter? And of course, I bet logically you're going to be able to say no, but my OCD is going to say to me, but yes, it does. It really does matter. It does matter. So this is where I kind of get in with people with OCD and have a little chat about the idea that there will never be a 100% answer that you will hear about what the purpose of life is. What's the purpose of the universe? Does the universe have an innate purpose or not? No one will ever be able to give you an answer that will be satisfying to that question. It is impossible. And the reason is because of the very nickname of OCD, which is the doubting disorder. And the doubting disorder will doubt everything. It will not accept anything as being 100% true or 100% real. So no matter what answer you get, you could have all of the modern day philosophers in the world come up to you and say, well, here's the answer. Well, here's the answer. Well, here's my answer. Then it's going to be, well, you said that, but you said it slightly different. So then what is it really? Is there actually going to ever be an answer to that question that everybody's going to agree on? I'm going to go with no. I don't think that there will be. And here's why. 4,000 years of writings about things, we haven't found one yet. So I'm going to just bet that no matter what, due to the fact that there are now over 8.5 billion people on the planet, and all of them will have a different idea about what purpose they serve, what's the meaning of life, what's the meaning of the universe, that there isn't going to be one. And it isn't about trying to find what it is. It's about accepting the fact that I'm not going to find what it is. And that is just so very hard for so many people to accept the fact that I am not going to have a 100% answer about something. Shamika, I'm wondering, as you were kind of going through therapy at first, what was it like for you to accept the fact that your therapist could not guarantee you a 100% guarantee that you would never get sick or have a germ?
It was tough because, like you mentioned, dealing with OCD is that uncertainty. And with OCD, you want to be sure. You need to be exact. I need facts. And this is not something you're ever going to be able to have 100%. And like you said, Dr. McGrath, it's accepting that nothing is 100%. Have I accepted that I'm always going to have, this is always going to be around,
Mm-hmm.
but I know how to manage it so much better. I'm not as triggered as I was before. I can still maintain a healthy life now and have healthy relationships. When I'm able to recognize my thoughts, I can automatically say, okay, we're not going that direction today. This is OCD. This is what it is. All right, let it do its thing. And we keep moving. And over time, as you continue to build and build and build upon getting stronger and stronger and stronger and empowering yourself, it gets easier and it gets easier.
Mm-hmm. But it's a lot of work, as you said, though.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It is work. But if you're determined that you want to get better, you can.
Will D says, I have sexual orientation OCD. However, I've noticed that I'm always concerned about being overweight or gaining weight. This worry makes me check my weight every day. Can this be OCD? Uh, I don't know yet. Well, it's hard, just I'd want some more information around that. Um, Here's the thing, though. Anytime that you're checking something like that, I wonder if there would be an obsession that would be about your weight. I don't know what you mean, concern versus some kind of obsession around weight, and what does weight mean or something like that. But here's where I would go, Will. Great question to run past a well-trained OCD therapist who can help you to do some ERP around it. And even if it's not necessarily related to the sexual orientation OCD, can still help you with maybe not checking your weight right at any given day, and living with the doubt and uncertainty about what is my weight today, and if I don't know, what does that mean, and what if I went up in weight, and then what will that mean about me, or what if I lost weight and what will that mean about me. It might even be related to sexual orientation themes too, if you're concerned about attractiveness or lack of attractiveness based on weight, then that could come across through some of this as well too. So I think it's a pretty interesting question to run past a therapist to get their thoughts about it. Lisa Sims says, hello, I'm having really bad thoughts about my unknown future plans. I don't really know what I want to do. And because of the unknown, my OCD is going rampant because of it. I'll throw in something, and then Shamika, I'm going to bring you in, and I want to get your opinion on something on that too. So Lisa, there are lots of people who go to college, don't have a major. There's people who change their career even after knowing what they want to do in their future. There's people who say they love each other, get married, and get divorced a year later. There's a lot of people who have a lot of plans that don't really all happen. So I'm wondering if your OCD has grabbed onto the notion that the only way to function and move into the future is to have a plan and then follow that plan 100% to the T, without recognizing that most plans don't go exactly kind of the way that you think that they were going to go. And that's one of the reasons we all have insurance, by the way, is insurance is really designed to help you deal with things when the plan doesn't quite go the way the plan would want. Shamika, how did your OCD screw with your plans?
Oh, that's a great question. For me, I really want to say, I don't want to say it destroyed my life, but it destroyed everything. It took over everything. I had no social life. I had no plans for the future. I always knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted to, do the picture perfect, get married, have kids, and live in this house and do family trips. But at that time, being in that dark phase, it didn't seem feasible at all. So I really didn't bank on having any future plans. I just banked on everything. This is the way my life is going to be. And because there was no future, because I didn't see any way out.
Yeah. Lisa, my hope for you would be that you won't be able to make a future plan that OCD will ever find satisfying enough where it says to you, okay, now you've made a future plan. Now it's okay to move into the future. So, Lisa, what I want you to do is work with a therapist who will help you with having ambiguity and uncertainty, and allow you to learn to sit and live with that and recognize that that's okay to have, that you can handle that. I mean, I'm in my basement right now. I'm going to walk upstairs after this is done, and I'm going to make some dinner. I have no guarantee that even on the way up the stairs, I won't trip and fall back down the stairs, crack my head open, and die. I don't have a guarantee that that won't happen. It could. Now, I think the likelihood's low, right? But should I just stay down here for the rest of my life just to make sure that I avoid the chance of something like that happen? So I have a plan, but I also accept that the plan might not go ahead the way that it wants to go to. And that's where I'd love to get you to, Lisa, is to be able to have a plan, but also be okay with the fact that you have no guarantee of exactly how it's going to work out. Well, we have a couple of shout outs. We have Desiree and VA Girl, who are nurses as well, saying hello to their fellow nurses. So that's awesome. M says, can you speak on fear of repressed memories in OCD? I know it's not common, but I've heard about it. I obsessively go through my memories. Oh, it's more common than you think. Definitely. There are definitely people, and Shamika, I'm going to get to you about contamination because I'm going to bet this played a little bit of a role in some of your stuff too, but I'll get there in a second. So M, here's the deal. If OCD can doubt something, then it's going to grab onto it. Well, why wouldn't OCD be able to doubt a memory? And if something did happen the way that we remember it or not, and then convince us, well, maybe we made that up in our head, and maybe that isn't the way. Maybe that's the way we wanted it to go, but how do we know for 100% sure? And the answer, of course, is, well, we don't, right? We can't have 100% sure. There's probably about 20 people in the world that have a photographic memory. One of them was Mary Lou Henner. She was on the show Taxi back in the old days, and she's been interviewed on television. And she could basically say to you, if you give her a date, she could say, well, I wore this that day, and then I was at rehearsal. And people could go back and actually verify the things that she says that they are. Otherwise, all of us kind of live in this idea of, yeah, I kind of remember a lot of things. I know that I did some stuff yesterday. I can't tell you exactly everything that I did and every email that I read and all those kinds of things. And if I can't even remember everything from yesterday, I'm definitely not going to remember everything that happened 5, 10, 15, or 20 years ago. And if I had OCD, my OCD would then want to run to the worst case scenario on that potentially and say, oh my gosh, what if this? So there we go. So we just want to make sure that everybody kind of recognizes this. OCD is going to screw with anything that is important to you, anything that has meaning to you, anything that feels worthwhile to you. Okay. So Shamika, I'm curious, did you ever have a point where you do something and then you doubt your memory about it? And what if you became contaminated by it and have to go do rituals about it anyway?
Absolutely.
Tell us about it.
Absolutely. It happened to me 2 weeks ago. So by no means, to my OCD family out there, by no means am I 100% cured for this. I have to stay on top of this every day. Every day. I can drive down the street, and especially at night, and if somebody is riding a bike or walking on the street, my thoughts will automatically go to, what if I hit the person with my car? And I'm like, I know good and well I didn't hit them. There was no thud. There was no noise. There was nothing that would make me think that I hit this person. But my mind's going, well, what if you did and you don't remember that you hit them? And I really have to say to myself, you know what? If you hit them, you hit them. And that's how I had to. And that's really, what if I had to tell myself, what if you did hit them? And then, of course, for me, it goes, well, there's going to be blood on the car. Then how do you deal with that situation? And I just really have to, at that point, it's not good to do rational thinking, but I just have to let it be. And sometimes you really have to let it be. Don't go back and forth with yourself of, did it happen? Did it happen? Because ultimately, it really doesn't matter if it happened or not. You're just ruminating at that point. And when you start to recognize that, it really doesn't matter whether it happened or not, because how is it going to affect you now?
Yeah, there's no way to convince someone with OCD that something didn't happen, right? And so there's always that. B says, can OCD ever completely convince you? Well, Shamika, I'm going to bet OCD completely convinced you on numerous times that you were contaminated, right?
Absolutely. OCD will completely convince you of whatever your subtype is, 100%. And I always feel like it's good versus evil. You have your rational side saying, no, this didn't happen. And then you have your irrational side saying, yes, it did happen. And you're constantly battling in your mind. And I understand it's exhausting. It's very, very exhausting. And it will make you believe that. But they're all irrational thoughts. And when you come to recognize that they are just thoughts, and thoughts can't hurt you, that was something that also helped me. And I would say to myself, this is just a thought, and this thought cannot hurt me. It also, that statement in itself also helped me to not give the thought so much power. Because the more power you give the thought, the more you're feeding it. It's just like a child. It's just like a child. The more you feed this child, the more the child's going to grow. The more you feed negative thoughts, the more they're going to grow. When you start starving those thoughts and not giving it the attention and just saying, okay, it's a thought. Cool. Let it be. All right. It's a thought. Okay.
Yeah.
And you sit with it for a minute. When you start starving it, it will start to die.
OCD is that baby that nobody wants, right? you don't want to birth that one, right? Yeah.
Right.
But here's the thing. Even if you have it, there's treatments available for it. And that's what's
Absolutely.
good. Let's see here. Gabby says, my question is, what should I do when I get triggered? How can you bring yourself back from the instant panic and anxiety? I want to know how to help myself in the moment that it's happening. Thank you. Well, I could tell you, but I'm going to let someone who's lived this actually tell you. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Shamika.
That is a great question. And that was always a question that I asked my therapist, Gabby. How do I deal with this in the moment? How do I deal with this in the moment? Because in that moment, you're panicking, you're fearing, and you just want to come out of that moment. You don't want to feel that anxiety or that panic. Gabby, I'm with you. I've been there. What I've had to learn to do is, so many people will tell you, well, breathe through it. No, no, don't do that. Don't breathe through it. Sit with the feeling. And I know it sounds crazy. I know it does, but it really does work. Just sit with the feeling. Just feel the feeling. What I do is I literally will just sit there. I will close my eyes and I will just be in the moment. Just be in the moment. Just feel that anxiety. I promise you, Gabby, the anxiety will pass. Is the thoughts going to be there still? Yes, they are. Yes, they are, Gabby. The thoughts are still going to be there. But just remember, it's just a thought. The thought cannot hurt you.
You know, one thing, too, that I want to add on top of that is the notion that you can sit with it, as Shamika was saying. And the other piece is to live with it, that I've been trying to get people to think about, too, which is, okay, well, there's that. Oh, but I'm supposed to be going to work, so I'm going to go to work, right? I'm not going to let that stop me from living my life. And that is not distraction. Distraction would be, oh my gosh, that's really uncomfortable to get my phone out. I'm going to do my meditation and my breathing app and all these kinds of things. I'm going to do all that stuff until this goes away because I have to make this go away. That's distraction. Versus, wow, I'm really uncomfortable and I'm supposed to be getting on into the carpool right now. So I'm going to go outside and I'm going to get in the carpool, even though my brain's screaming at me, don't do it, stay here, it's safer here, something bad might happen, what if? I'm going to listen to that, I'm going to acknowledge it, and I'm going to move on and I'm going to live my life, and I'm not going to let that rule my life anymore, because those thoughts aren't going to hurt me, right? Some of you have heard me describe what is it? It's like the Grover book from Sesame Street. There's a monster at the end of this book, and it keeps saying, "Don't turn the page, don't turn the page, don't turn the page." And what happens when you get to the last page? It's just Grover going, "Oh, it was me. I'm the monster." Okay, that's what OCD is, but it blows itself up like a puffer fish, and it tries to make itself look all badass and everything like that. And the reality is, it can't do anything to you, right? Other than make you uncomfortable. But when you learn that you can handle the discomfort that it leads toward, then you got nothing to fear, right? Nothing to fear at all. All right. Traditional Catholic says, for someone who has done CBT with decent results, what recommendations have you for someone with insomnia and bedtime ritual checking, OCD, like the doors and stove? One thing I used to do was film checking with your iPhone. Now I don't do near as much, but still sometimes I just need to check Ken out of fear of not sleeping. So one of the things I see a lot of people who have this fear of not sleeping. I've seen people who have to check constantly because they think, well, if I'm worried about the fact that the stove's on or the door's open, I won't be able to sleep. I've seen other people do a fear of not sleeping by saying, well, what if I have to get up and go to the bathroom? So I'm going to stay up all night and try to push everything out of me to make sure there's nothing in me. And that way, nothing will wake me up when I go to the bathroom. Oh, by the way, I didn't sleep last night because I spent all night in the bathroom trying to push everything out to make sure that I wouldn't wake up. A lot of times what happens in OCD is we create the very thing that we're afraid of happening by giving into the OCD, right? And that's what's happening in this situation. You're not going to sleep well because you're going to spend all night getting up and checking things to make sure that nothing's bad so that you'll be able to sleep well. So what I want you to do, traditional Catholic, is I want you to kind of decide, tonight's the night. I'm going to be uncomfortable. I might not sleep well at all tonight, but I'm going to learn that I can handle not sleeping well and not check instead of doing what the OCD wants me to do. What do you want to throw on that, Shamika?
I think you hit the nail right on the head. It all comes down to how bad do you want your recovery? You have to work for your recovery, and you have to put yourself in those uncomfortable spaces to where you're going to be triggered. And that's how you reach your recovery. Don't embrace it. Embrace it. When you see something, you know what? All right, I know exactly what this is, and we're going to win this. We're going to win this today. I like to say, find that inner strength. For those of us who may have been athletes in our past lives, high school, college, wherever you may be, we all face an opponent. Remember that time when you had to dig deep to be able to guard that person or to score that goal or whatever sport it is, to swim that extra lap or swim fast or whatever it may have been. Find that inner strength to push through.
Someone asked, I'm just scrolling through here as we're getting toward the end. Someone asked, are you working as a nurse again?
I work in health insurance. I am out
Okay.
of the acute setting right now. I love working in health insurance. I love and appreciate all of my acute care nurses who are still in the field, but I found a new love. So no, I'm no longer working in the acute care setting.
All right. Well, Shamika, we got about 2 minutes left. So any final words that you wanted to say to the crowd before we make our way out of here tonight?
I think I have to say to my OCD family, I know what you're going through. I still deal with it. There is help. There is a new side after OCD. But again, you have to ask yourself, how bad do you want your recovery? If you want to recover as bad as you want to breathe, or as much as you need to breathe, you'll fight for your recovery. Fight for yourself to get back to where you want to be. Fight to get back to the place where you want to be. And you're one decision away from a completely different tomorrow.
Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. It was great to have you here tonight, Shamika. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And we will be back again next week, everyone, to continue on. If anyone else ever wants to join like this, we'd love to have you.